Did NATO aggression start this war in Ukraine? And where does this idea even come from? And who stands to benefit the most? Let's follow the metaphorical money, because I can understand how this argument becomes popular. It preys on the good nature of people and their good morals who just want peace and are distrusting of our government. But with a little historical information and some common sense, we can easily see why it is nonsense and who benefits from this nonsense. So the NATO aggression argument, or the we poked the bear argument, denies history. Although I do find it quite ironic that this example is used as if literally poking a bear would mean you deserve to be ripped limb from limb, you know, the literal definition of overkill. So the example I see commonly used as, well, if Russia set up missile systems in Mexico, we wouldn't have that. So we can't expect Putin to be okay with it either. Here's why this example doesn't work and why the idea of NATO aggression is pure propaganda. First, there are 3 NATO countries already bordering Russia, 2 Baltic states who joined in 2002, and Finland who joined in 2022 after seeing what happened to Ukraine. But there wouldn't even be a need for a land border shared because long-range missiles from Poland, who joined in 1999, can already reach Moscow from their eastern border. So the idea that another country joining NATO somehow increases the threat is just dumb. The threat, if it's already there, has been there for decades. So you don't need to go to war to prevent something that's already taking place. Now let's address the idea that NATO is a threat, because one could argue how wrong it would be that Russia would have to contend with a long-range, missile-armed neighbors if they're up to no good. Well, ask yourself, how many times has anyone attacked Russia since World War II? The answer is 0. How many times has Russia physically attacked other countries since World War II? The answer is 6. Hungary in 56, Czechoslovakia 68, Afghanistan 79, Georgia 2008, Ukraine 2014, and Syria 2015. The claim that Putin is afraid of NATO aggression is dumb when you look at who has been doing the attacking. Obviously, when you have a neighbor that seeks to shore up its own borders through expansion and conquest, you might try to do what people have done since the dawn of time and band together in a defensive pact, which is exactly what NATO is, and why the countries flocked to it, for protection. Go read the NATO Charter. It says exactly what NATO is for, a defensive treaty, full stop. And being upset about that would be like if you installed a new fancy home security system and your neighbor labeled that as aggression and decided to attack you. There's no reason to be upset about your neighbor being able to defend themselves if you don't have a plan to break in, especially if your neighbor has never attacked you. So you can see that with a little bit of knowledge and history and some common sense, how this lie that we poked the bear is really more like there's a rabid bear rampaging around, and so some people built a wall and other people raced to get inside it. You can't blame people for building a wall to protect themselves from a rabid rampaging bear. This isn't provoking a poor misunderstood bear who just happens to have its bloody paws hovering over nuclear launch buttons. So what is more likely, that Putin is afraid of NATO not attacking like it's not attacked for the last 76 years? Or is it more likely that Putin hates any barrier put in place to stop him from getting what he wants? To stop him from continuing Russia's historical expansionist policies that seeks its border security through creating buffer vassal states? What's more likely, that we started this war, or that Putin spreads lies to sow division in the population of the biggest supporter of the barrier that he doesn't want? If you have any doubt, don't take my word for it. Go watch Sarah Payne, a professor of history and strategy at the Naval War College, or almost any other historian for that matter. Putin has a long documented history of wanting to piece the USSR back together, and it is also well documented that he is willing to lie, cheat, steal, and kill to get his objectives met. Additionally, the lie of NATO aggression tries to pull upon good-natured people and their remembering of our country's past mistakes, because it is true that we have participated in shady regime toppling and gotten involved in wars, like in the Middle East, that were predicated on lies. But this is not what's happening here. Europe knows Putin's mission, and they know that Ukraine is currently the dam holding back even more Russian aggression. And it is easy to be a contrarian from behind our protected wall, but ask yourself, would you willingly go live in Putin's Russia? And if this lie was true, which it isn't, what is the remedy for US having provoked Russia into attacking Ukraine? Leaving our victim Ukraine to be killed by Putin? I guess the wrongs of starting the war is canceled out by the wrong of leaving our unwitting victim to die? I guess the creator of this propaganda never learned the Western value that two wrongs don't make a right. This lie wants to get your buy-in on why it is okay to withdraw aid from Ukraine. But the problem of this lie goes further than just hurting Ukraine. It hurts our integrity and our alliances. In 1994, the U.S. signed the Budapest Memorandum, which gave Ukraine assurances of support if they were attacked, if they agreed to give up their nuclear weapons, which they did. And now that Trump has cut off aid, he has made America betray its word and betray our European allies. And these alliances, along with the creation of global institutions like UN, NATO, EU, G7, the World Trade Organization, are all global organizations that have created a world order predicated on international law, peacetime alliances, and global cooperation that most historians and political scientists would argue have kept the world safe from another world war. Trump has been denigrating many of these institutions, even threatening to pull us out of NATO entirely, saying lies like, "You think if we got attacked, France would come to our aid?" Well, actually, yes, because that's exactly what they are doing with Ukraine, particularly when we pulled out of our obligations. And Ukraine isn't even a part of NATO, so yes, they would. The biggest beneficiary of U.S. pulling out of Europe and away from the Ukraine war, and the biggest beneficiary of this lie is Russia. If Trump is successful at pulling our foreign policy back to that of the isolationist pre-World War I, the seeds will be planted for another world war. So if you are for peace, think on that. When countries can't air their grievances and have a governing body of law, you are left with Putin's world order, which is basically the biggest country takes whatever it wants and to hell with everyone else. Sound familiar? Yeah, we'll just take Greenland and Panama Canal one way or another. Does this sound like the ideals of America to you? Does Putin's vision of the world represent ideals of freedom, democracy, fairness, and prosperity? No. People do not prosper under that type of rule, which is exactly why the Soviet Union fell apart in the first place. And is that the world you would want to live in? Because that is what it means to drag us back to an isolationist, America First ideology. So no, we did not poke the bear and provoke this war. That lie doesn't hold up to common sense or historical data. And if you spread this lie that NATO is aggressive and started this war, then you are unwittingly spreading Putin's propaganda, supporting his goals of war and conquest, and buying into Putin's idea of a world order. And there is nothing more pro-war and anti-democratic than that.